The last set of graphs took kind of a long time because we were modeling the monopoly, and so I decided to cut the graph cut the video at that point. Our next one is hopefully a little bit simpler, but we're going to look at monopolistic competition. And for monopolistic competition, a lot of this comes directly from what we saw before. So I'm just going to very quickly be drawing some cost curves. Again, ones that you've seen now over and over again, and you should hopefully know how to draw them pretty quickly on your own. Now, we should define for a second what monopolistic competition is. It's kind of it's a little bit in between monopoly and perfect competition, but it's in many ways closer to perfect competition because there are many firms and it is easy to enter the market. However, it's not perfect competition because in this case we actually do have some product differentiation. I think this is a perfect example of this would be pizza. You know, there's lots of different pizza companies and they all sell almost the exact same thing, but they're a little bit different. And you know, Hungry Howie's has flavored crust, and Little Caesars is hot and ready, and et cetera, et cetera. And so like monopolies, they do face their own individual demand curve, and it is downward sloping. And so that means then that marginal revenue curve, just like we saw with a monopoly, is going to be sloping down again, twice the negative slope of the demand curve. And so again, we're going to find that our profit maximizing point is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, which is not out at that socially efficient point, nor is it at the most productively efficient point, which was that lowest cost. The nice thing that we saw with perfect competition, I guess the nice thing from an economic standpoint, is that in the long run, when we get to equilibrium, we are indeed producing at the productively efficient cost. We're also producing at the, I didn't even write it in there. I should fix that. We're also producing where marginal benefit equals marginal cost, and so we're really producing at the productively efficient point, we're producing at the socially efficient point, and we're producing with no economic profit. With a monopoly, we had a huge economic profit, and of course what it leads to is much higher prices and less stuff being produced, so we don't really like it. With a monopolistic, again, we're kind of in between those two things. So we're not producing at that point or that point. But we could, in the short run, be making a profit. So if this is our case, here's the point where we're going to produce. That means this is that quantity that I'm going to produce at. The price that I'm going to be able to charge is all the way up here. And the cost per one that I make is at this point here, so it's at this quantity along my average total cost. That's how much they are costing me on average. And there we have a little section of profit. Now, the thing with monopolistic competition then is that in the long run, what's going to happen is if people see that, oh, hey, I'm making a higher than normal profit, I'm making that economic profit, you know what, I should get into the pizza making business. And so we're going to end up with a lot of competition. And what does that competition do? Well, that competition is ultimately going to drive the market demand down. So let's try to draw our scenario where we started again. Oops, let's go to the pen. So there's marginal cost. there is, trying to draw this one nicely here, average total cost. And now what I've got to draw in here is what happened to demand. So before demand was way out here, in the long run, that demand is actually going to shift backward. In fact, what it's going to do is it's going to shift to a point. See if I can draw it. Oh, I almost did it perfectly. Let me try that again. It's supposed to get closer and closer to the curve, and it's probably going to touch at one point there. Beautiful. So there we go. There's my market demand. It shifted back. It's no longer out here. And so my marginal revenue curve, let me just cheat a little bit there and make my mark so I know where I'm going. My marginal revenue curve will look like that. That's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, so that's where I'm going to produce. That is the quantity I'll produce. The price I'll charge, see, I drew it just right. The price that I'm going to actually charge is in fact the price that it's costing me to produce it. So I no longer have an economic, oops, that's price, sorry. So there's no economic profit. I'm just making normal profit. And so there's no incentive for other people to join the industry because you've driven my demand down to the point where I'm no longer making an economic profit. If the demand had shifted even further, of course, we'd have an economic loss. And then just like we saw with the perfect competition, we're going to have to make a decision. Do we close now or do we stay open? So in the long run, there's no economic profit.